Thank you for joining us today for this presentation on youth vaping prevention. As the U.S. Surgeon General has stated, the problem of youth vaping has risen to the status of a national epidemic. In other words, we are in the midst of a crisis, and it is imperative that we act quickly to stop the problem from spiraling further out of control. By viewing this presentation, you are arming yourself with an important tool in this battle: knowledge. And with this information, you are becoming a vital part of the solution. The e-cigarette sector of the tobacco industry is evolving at a rapid pace, with new products constantly entering the market. As policymakers scramble to rein in the issue, new regulations are being put into place at the local, state, and national levels. It can be tough to keep up with everything, and this is a common struggle when dealing with a crisis. We'll do our best to distill the latest and most important information for you in this presentation, but please keep in mind that the information you'll hear today is current as of February 2020. The following objectives will be covered during the course of the presentation: words to know, how did we get here, what are e-cigarettes, what we know, short and long-term effects, and what can be done. First, let's get everyone up to speed on the terminology. Here are some words that you need to know. E-cigarettes, short for electronic cigarette. An e-cigarette is a battery-powered device that heats and disperses a liquid so that it can be inhaled into the lungs. Popular e-cigarette brands include Juul, Soren Drops, and Blue. Nicotine is a toxic, colorless, or yellowish, oily liquid that is the chief active component of tobacco. It acts as a stimulant in small doses, but in larger amounts blocks the action of nerve and muscle cells. Nicotine is also used in insecticides. E-juice is the slang term for the liquid in an e-cigarette. Its formal name is e-liquid, and more often than not, it includes nicotine and flavoring chemicals. Vapor is a substance diffused or suspended in the air, especially when normally liquid or solid. An aerosol is a substance enclosed under pressure and able to be released as a fine spray, typically by means of a propellant gas. E-cigarettes produce what is considered an aerosolized vapor that consists of liquid particles and gaseous chemicals. This brings us to vaping, which is a slang for using an e-cigarette. It is a term that's meant to make e-cigarette use sound less harmful than it really is. The word vapor makes most people think of water vapor, but as we'll learn, that's not what's being inhaled. So let's use this definition for vaping. Inhaling the aerosolized chemicals created through the heating of e-liquid in an e-cigarette. Starting to sound a little less innocent, isn't it? Juul is the most popular type of e-cigarette being used today, making up 66% of the overall e-cigarette market. The Juul products are so popular they have spawned their own terminology. Students who use a Juul device might not consider themselves as vaping or using an e-cigarette, but Juuling. Juul pods are the small disposable cartridges that contain the flavored e-juice for the Juul. Students who Juul may also refer to inhaling on their Juul as a Juul rip. In some schools, students even refer to the bathroom as Juul lounges. Disposable e-cigarettes are an e-cigarette device that cannot be reused once the e-liquid has run dry. This type of e-cigarette is not part of the flavor ban, therefore, thousands of flavors are still available. How did we get here? In 2018, the Surgeon General warned that youth vaping was an epidemic, saying we must take action now to protect the nation's young people. His announcement came after the release of the 2018 National Youth Tobacco Survey results that showed a dramatic increase in youth e-cigarette use rates for both middle school and high school students from 2017 to 2018. That year, usage of e-cigarettes by middle school students leapt by 48%, while high school usage jumped by a staggering 78%. The release of the 2019 survey data shows the epidemic continues to grow. From 2017 to 2019, youth e-cigarette use rose by 135% for high school students and 218% for middle school students. This means that over 5 million middle and high school students reported using e-cigarettes in 2019, an alarming increase of almost 3.2 million students in 2 years. Of the more than 5 million youth currently use e-cigarettes, 1.6 million, about 20%, reported using the product on 20 or more days per month, classifying them as frequent users. Another important insight from the 2019 survey was the product use breakdown. Juul is the most popular brand of vaping device, with more than half of middle and high school schoolers, 59.1% of high school and 54.1% of middle school students reporting Juul as their usual e-cigarette brand. After Juul, the next most popular vaping devices were the Soren Drop and Smoke Nordkit vaping device. Despite an overall decrease in youth using traditional cigarettes, the data from the National Youth Tobacco Survey actually show an overall increase in tobacco use. The alarming rates at which youth are beginning to vape is undermining the progress that has been made toward reducing overall tobacco use. In 2011, use of any tobacco product among high school students was 24.2%. By 2019, that figure had risen to 31.2%. Similarly, among middle school students, use of any tobacco product rose from 7.5% in 2011 to 12.5% in 2019. In other words, 1 in 3 high school students and 1 in 8 middle school students, that's a combined total of 6.2 million kids, report using some form of tobacco product. Why is this concerning? The use of e-cigarettes and other tobacco products, particularly those with high levels of nicotine, places youth at risk for developing a nicotine addiction. Nicotine exposure during adolescence could harm brain development. Additionally, youth who use e-cigarettes are more likely to start using another nicotine product. The 2019 National Youth Tobacco Survey data showed that among youth who currently use tobacco, about 1 in 3 reported using 2 or more tobacco products in the past 30 days. And here's one statistic that really scares the public health community. A study by the University of Pittsburgh found that young adults who use electronic cigarettes are more than 4 times as likely to begin smoking tobacco cigarettes within 18 months as their peers who do not vape. E-cigarettes may turn out to be an off-ramp for some older long-time smokers, but they're already a huge on-ramp for new young smokers. Big Tobacco used the term replacement smokers in the 80s to refer to young people they needed to draw into tobacco use in order to replace their dying customers. Perhaps this link between vaping and smoking pulls back the veil on the tobacco industry motives behind the multi-billion-dollar investment in e-cigarette companies, like the $12.8 billion investment by Altria, formerly known as Philip Morris, in Juul. It's pretty clear that the new replacement smokers for Big Tobacco are today's young vaping teens. So why has there been this rapid and dramatic increase in youth use? This figure from the National Institute of Health shows the knowledge gap that students have about e-juice ingredients. What we see is not just that 13.7% of teens don't know what's in their e-cigarette, 66% believe it's just flavoring. As we learned in Part 1, there are many different chemicals in e-cigarette vapor, and more often than not, there's nicotine. According to the Truth Initiative, 99% of e-cigarettes sold in 2015 contained nicotine. This lack of knowledge about e-cigarettes makes youth more susceptible to the mistruths they may encounter online or hear from their peers. We'll talk later about how Catch My Breath arms young people with the facts about vaping so that they can spot mistruths or flat-out lies when they see them. Another major contributor to the increase is pervasive marketing and advertising. According to the 2019 National Youth Tobacco Survey, 7 in 10 kids are regularly exposed to e-cigarette advertisements. The chart on the screen shows a breakdown of where students are being exposed to these ads. 58.4% of youth were exposed via retail stores, 44.6% exposed via the internet, 26.2% exposed via TV, streaming services or movies, and 34.8% exposed via newspapers or magazines. It's important to teach kids to recognize e-cigarette ads, which can be stealthy and subtle in social media, so they can understand when they are being sold something. Think about your social media use or your children's use. We can control who we follow and who follows us, but we can't control the advertising that pops up. We also need to think about the influencers and celebrities that might use these products and post about them. Catch My Breath helps students dissect advertisements, direct and indirect, to understand when they are being sold something. Researchers found that in early marketing campaigns, Juul clearly targeted young audience, crafting their brand and advertising around strategies that were appealing to teenagers. Dr. Robert Jackler, a tobacco advertising expert, states, Juul ads are filled with attractive young models socializing and flirtatiously sharing the flash drive-shaped device, displaying behavior like dancing to club music and clothing styles more characteristic of teens than mature adults. One major difference that sets Juul apart from other companies was the strong social media presence, utilizing hashtags and peer-to-peer promotion through activities like Juul Challenges, which were stunts or activities devised by social media influencers that encouraged people to take and post pictures or videos of themselves doing various things with their Juul devices. These kind of guerrilla social media tactics create the illusion of grassroots, genuine enthusiasm and activity, but are actually meticulously coordinated and strategic marketing campaigns, sometimes mockingly referred to as AstroTurf, for being fake grassroots campaigns. We like to compare e-cigarettes to phones or computers. Whether it's an iPhone or an Android or a Mac or a PC, they all essentially do the same thing and have the same parts. They just look different. The same applies to e-cigarettes. All e-cigarettes contain a battery, microprocessor, atomizer, and cartridge or tank. There are many variations on the mechanism, but the basic process is the same. The microprocessor senses a change in pressure when the user inhales on the end of the e-cigarette. The microprocessor then instructs the atomizer to activate the heater and vaporize the liquid, which the smoker inhales through the mouthpiece. The vapor is then drawn into the body the same way as regular cigarette is smoked. E-cigarettes come in several different forms: disposable, rechargeable tanks, and refillable. This chart shows a brief history of e-cigarettes. When they hit the market in the United States, they looked like disposable, pictured in red box number 1. These e-cigarettes often resemble the shape and or look of traditional cigarettes and are intended to be used until the liquid runs out, at which point they are discarded. Then we evolved to tanks, pictured in green box number 2. Tanks are large e-cigarettes with a rechargeable battery and a large refillable cartridge. These are also called mods because you can break them open and modify some of the parts. These are also the devices that you can see in national vaping competitions. Soren Drops, pictured in box number 3, is an e-cigarette and is a refillable pod-shaped design to look like the shape of a teardrop. Pictured in yellow box number 4, the most popular in the e-cigarette epidemic is Juul. Juul uses small disposable pods that insert into larger Juul device, which is rechargeable. A Juul device could easily be confused with a USB drive, and they can even be charged in laptops or computers. Students who use a Juul device might not consider themselves as vaping or using an e-cigarette, but Juuling. Students who use Juul may also refer to inhaling on their Juul as a Juul rip. In some schools, students even refer to the bathroom as Juul lounges. There are more than 8,000 different flavors of e-juice and counting. The use of flavors to mask the harshness of tobacco is a seductive and deceptive marketing technique that has been used by the tobacco industry for decades, including products like menthol cigarettes or fruit-flavored cigars. But e-cigarette vapor lacks the harsh burn of traditional cigarettes or cigars, making the first puff that much friendlier on the palate and thus easier for kids to take up the habit. According to the Journal of the American Medical Association, 81% of kids who ever used tobacco products started with a flavored product. On the 2019 National Youth Tobacco Survey, 68.8%, 3.7 million, of current e-cigarette users reported using a flavored tobacco product. Many youth think that when they vape or Juul, they aren't consuming nicotine, yet 99% of e-cigarettes sold in U.S. convenience stores, supermarkets, and similar outlets in 2015 contain nicotine. Beyond nicotine, any substance that can be transformed into a liquid can be used in an e-cigarette, including other narcotics like marijuana. Juul pods have an incredibly high nicotine concentration, which puts each puff from a Juul on par with the nicotine delivered in a puff from a traditional cigarette. The amount of nicotine in a single Juul pod is equal to the amount of nicotine found in an entire pack of cigarettes and includes roughly the same number of puffs, 200. This is not the norm for e-cigarettes. In fact, Juuls are more than double the maximum concentration allowed in the European Union. And the sale of Juul devices have been banned in other countries because of their remarkably high nicotine content. As a response to both regulatory and public pressure, Juul released lower concentration, 3% nicotine pods, though these still exceed the European Union limit. It's also important to note that if someone becomes addicted to nicotine and is used to a high concentration in their product, they are less likely to switch to a lower concentration product. In just over 1 year's time, Juul jumped from owning 24% of the overall e-cigarette market share in August of 2017 to over 75% in October 2018. Despite the recent scrutiny in the media and by the FDA, Juul continues to dominate the e-cigarette industry by over 60% in the figures from December 2019. Additionally, Juul received a $12.8 billion investment from Altria, a parent company to Philip Morris, in 2018 for a 35% stake in Juul. When asked by Congress if Juul is big tobacco, Juul CEO responded, "No, we just take money from them." To make the Juul device more fashionable, many companies have created Juul wraps or skins, as pictured on the right. They come in almost anything you can imagine, from Marvel Comics, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Camo, and I have even seen them with pictures of Mary or Jesus. Even Etsy shops have hopped on the Juul bandwagon, with trendy, hand-knitted Juul koozies pictured on the left, lanyards, and iPhone cases. Perhaps most shocking is the emergence of clothing especially designed to conceal vaping devices. Vape Barware has a line of clothing that connects to an e-cigarette, and yes, it is Juul compatible. There's a pocket for the device inside the shirt that connects to the drawstring, which conceals a hose leading to the e-cigarette. Is that student chewing on the drawstring of their hoodie or taking a pull of their Juul? The tagline says it all: vape anything, vape anywhere. The accessories and add-ons make Juul seem more like a high-tech gadget than a tobacco device. Is that just a Sharpie? Take a closer look. It was a Sharpie at one point, but the marker has been taken out and a Juul has been inserted. This is an actual product that was confiscated from a student in school. Using nicotine in adolescence can harm the parts of the brain that control attention, learning, mood, and impulse control. Each time a new memory is created or a skill is learned, stronger connections or synapses are built between brain cells. Young people's brains build synapses faster than adult brains. Nicotine changes the way these synapses are formed, interfering with the brain's sensitive pleasure and rewards feedback loop. Because of this, nicotine in adolescence may also increase risk for future addiction to other drugs. E-cigarette use has been shown to increase the risk of ever using combustible tobacco cigarettes among youth and young adults. Young adults who use e-cigarettes are more than 4 times likely to begin smoking cigarettes within 18 months compared to their peers who do not vape. The vapor produced and inhaled when using an e-cigarette or Juul is not harmless. In fact, it can often contain many harmful ingredients. While e-cigarette vapor generally contains fewer harmful chemicals than smoke from burned tobacco, it is important to keep in mind the difference between less harm and harmless. Jumping out of a 3rd-story window will cause less harm than jumping out of the 10th floor, but neither is harmless. E-cigarette juice, e-juice, is the liquid that is heated to become the inhaled vapor. This is the same with Juul devices. The e-juice may contain cancer-causing chemicals, heavy metals such as nickel, tin, and lead, and almost always contain the addictive tobacco-derived compound nicotine. The nicotine content and concentration may vary, but as we'll learn, labels aren't always the true indicator of what's inside e-juice. Some of the ingredients in e-cigarette vapor could be physically harmful to the lungs in the long term. For example, some e-cigarette flavorings may have been deemed safe to eat, but not to inhale. It is difficult for consumers to know what e-cigarette products contain because labeling requirements are limited and inconsistently applied. For example, some e-cigarettes marketed as containing 0% nicotine have been found to contain nicotine. Finally, we want to bring your attention to an announcement issued by the FDA in early April 2019 regarding e-cigarettes, seizures, and lung disease. The statement reads, "We have reports indicating that some people who use e-cigarettes, especially youth and young adults, are experiencing seizures following their use." Since then, CDC states, while it appears that vitamin E acetate is associated with lung injury associated with the use of e-cigarettes, vaping, or products, there are many different substances and product sources that are being investigated, and there may be more than one cause. As the report shows, there have been several hospitalizations and even deaths from the outbreak of lung injury associated with the use of e-cigarettes, vaping, or products. While the CDC reports a continual decline since illnesses peaked in September of 2019, it still advises the following regardless of the ongoing investigation. E-cigarette or vaping products should never be used by youth, young adults, or women who are pregnant. Adults who do not currently use tobacco products should not start using e-cigarette or vaping products. There is no safe tobacco product. All tobacco products, including e-cigarettes, carry a risk. Whether or not this correlation ends up being proven, it begs the question, what other risks might there be? There is very little we know about the long-term effects of e-cigarette use, and unfortunately, this generation of kids have become the guinea pigs. Will there be more links to other negative health effects down the road? Lung injury associated with the use of e-cigarettes, vaping, or products presents like pneumonia. So it's important that if you or anyone you know experiences these symptoms for a prolonged period of time, more than a few days, that a physician is consulted and any e-cigarette use, nicotine or THC related, is disclosed. The 2019 Monitoring the Future survey results found the top 3 reasons why teens vape include: number 1, to experiment, to see what it's like; number 2, because it tastes good; number 3, tied with, to have a good time with my friends, and to relax or relieve tension. It is important to note that teens who reported to relax or relieve tension increased by more than 1/3 compared to 2018. We have learned as someone uses a nicotine product, the chemical is absorbed into their system and mood and pleasure centers are aroused. The tolerance and physical dependence for the substance increases as use continues. Going without nicotine can produce withdrawal symptoms as well as craving for more nicotine. The cycle continues to repeat. As we continue to learn about vaping, there are signs to look for to identify if your child or student is vaping. If your child's student is normally calm and very easygoing, but now they seem very anxious and irritable with not a lot of patience, is it just the teenage years or could the child be vaping? Often someone who is dependent on nicotine has a difficulty concentrating. If a student is vaping and they are having this nicotine withdrawal in class, they may not be paying attention to the teacher, but rather thinking of when they can get their next nicotine fix on their vaping device. If your child at home has a sudden interest in burning candles or incense, it could be because they are trying to hide the flavor from their e-cigarette. The same goes for sudden interest in using cheap perfume or cologne. It can be used to hide the smell of the flavored vapor. Other symptoms include change in eating patterns, which can result in weight gain or weight loss, mouth sores or irritation around the mouth from being exposed to chemicals and vapor, and an increase in thirst because some of the chemicals found in e-liquid can cause dry mouth. So now that we have learned some of the symptoms to look for to identify if your child, student, is vaping, how do I talk to my child's student about vaping? Before you start the conversation, know the facts. You've already started this process by attending this training. When you start the conversation, do not start with, "We need to talk." No one likes to hear that. Our immediate thought is, "Oh, what did I do wrong?" Instead, bring up a recent event or news story about vaping. Recently, there was the first teenager of 17 who died with a vaping-related complications. It is the safe way to start the conversation without accusing your child of vaping. Ask for support from your healthcare provider and other trusted adults. Answer their questions, and if there's something you don't know, let them know that is a good question and you'll find out the answer. This is not a one-and-done conversation. Keep the conversation going, as this is an ongoing emerging health crisis among our young population. Remind and repeat. We have outlined a few cessation services available for young people to quit vaping. On December 20, 2019, the President signed legislation to raise the minimum age of sale of tobacco products from 18 to 21 years nationwide. This means anyone who hadn't turned 21 by December 31st of 2019 will be unable to purchase any tobacco product, including cigarettes, cigars, and e-cigarettes, until they are 21. This will play an important role in cutting off youth access to tobacco products through older friends, as the age gap now extends well beyond the high school age. In January 2020, the President issued an executive order banning flavored pre-filled pods, except menthol and tobacco flavors. The FDA also finalized an enforcement policy to punish any retailers caught selling unauthorized flavors of cartridge-based e-cigarettes. While this limited flavor ban is a significant step forward, it is important to note that the new restrictions only apply to closed pre-filled pods like jewel cartridges. Most of the flavors we learned about earlier come in the form of e-liquid, which will still be available in thousands of youth-friendly flavors. The ban also exempts disposable e-cigarettes, which are climbing in popularity among youth, and refillable pod systems, including products like the Soren Drop and Smoke Nord Kit that are pictured here and were the most preferred brands after Juul, according to the 2019 National Youth Tobacco Survey. As we mentioned, the new limited flavor ban does not cover disposable e-cigarettes as seen in brands like Puff Bar, Stig, and Fog. In other words, flavors are still allowed and widely available on the market, and experts are concerned that kids will shift from brands like Juul to these inexpensive, disposable, flavored products. Catch My Breath is a nicotine vaping prevention program that has been proven effective at reducing the likelihood that students will experiment with vaping. The theoretical background for the program is social cognitive theory, which views health behaviors as products of personal, social, and environmental factors. In addition to building knowledge, Catch My Breath disrupts normative beliefs, such as the notion that everybody's doing it. Students develop skills to help them resist peer pressure and see through advertising and misinformation that perpetuates online and in social media. And as a whole, the program creates favorable attitudes and beliefs about not using e-cigarettes. As we learned earlier in this training, the question isn't, will my students be exposed to e-cigarettes? It's, what will my students do when they're exposed to e-cigarettes? Catch My Breath gives students a wide range of skills and tools to help them respond to any number of real-world scenarios. The program was designed by our lead researcher, Professor Stephen Kelder, from the University of Texas Health Science Center at Houston School of Public Health. Dr. Kelder was a senior scientific editor of the Surgeon General's report on youth e-cigarette use that came out in 2016 and has over 25 years of experience in developing and researching child health programs. In January 2020, Catch My Breath became the first nicotine vaping prevention program to demonstrate effectiveness in a peer-reviewed study, making it the first, and as of February 2020, the only, evidence-based youth vaping prevention program. The study was published in Public Health Reports, the official journal of the U.S. Surgeon General. Based on the findings of the peer-reviewed research paper as published in the Public Health Reports, we'd like to give you an idea of what this program could do for schools across the country. The average 7th grade class size in U.S. public schools is approximately 192 students. If nothing is done, we project 17 of those 7th grade students will try an e-cigarette by the end of 2019-2020 school year. If a school implements Catch My Breath, 8 of those 17 students, 45%, will not try an e-cigarette this year. If every public school in the country implemented Catch My Breath, 153,600 fewer 7th grade kids would try e-cigarettes this year alone. The Catch My Breath program is implemented in all 50 states and has reached 1 million youth since inception. Catch My Breath is available for elementary, middle, and high schools. The program consists of 4 lessons that each take between 35 and 40 minutes. The lessons are a combination of teacher presentations and peer-facilitated small group discussion and projects. Our pilot study results showed that 91% of teachers felt confident in their ability to deliver the lessons. We reached such a high teacher confidence level by providing PowerPoint presentations with slide-by-slide scripts that guide teachers every step of the way, while providing a base knowledge that helps them feel prepared to answer any questions the students may have about e-cigarettes. Since June 2018, Catch My Breath has been in several national and local news outlets, including CNBC, Edutopia, CNN, Axios, and others. These stories are not just to boast about Catch My Breath, but also to let you know that the youth vaping epidemic is a national conversation. It can feel like an isolating experience, but there are people across the country who are scared and angry, and it's time to take action. This is a testimony from a high school senior in Illinois who went through Catch My Breath in the fall of 2018. The piece says, "I chose to do it being use e-cigarettes, but after recent thoughts and ideas in this class, the class being Catch My Breath, have chosen to stop." These quotes are from students across the country that have been through the middle school curriculum. In the 5th and 6th grade Catch My Breath curriculum, students are asked to create warning labels addressing the dangers of vaping. These examples are from youth located in Illinois. The Catch My Breath program is free to schools across the nation thanks to our partners at CVS Health. In 2014, CVS took tobacco products out of their stores and dedicated $50 million for 5 years towards youth tobacco prevention. Since 2017, Catch Global Foundation has been funded as part of this initiative, and our goal was to reach 200,000 students by 2020. There are many steps you can take to reduce the number of teenage e-cigarette users. Here, we've provided a few suggestions of how you can get involved in your community from individual level all the way to the federal level. Don't be afraid to talk to other parents. This could be where you drop off your kids, when you're having lunch with a friend, or run into a neighbor on a walk. You don't have to be an expert in e-cigarettes to open the conversation. Start by asking if they heard about e-cigarettes or had any experience with e-cigarettes. E-cigarettes are still new, and schools are working out how to address the problem. Write an email or call the principal at your child's school and ask for vaping to be added to the tobacco and alcohol section of the school code of conduct. You may also want to recommend implementation of the Catch My Breath program. Another way to engage the school and parents is to call your local parent-teacher association and find out if they'd like more information on e-cigarettes. Consider offering to deliver this presentation at their next meeting. Finally, e-cigarette policy is evolving. While Tobacco 21 and the limited flavor ban are positive steps, there's still plenty of work to be done. Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids and PAVE, Parents Against Vaping E-Cigarettes, can keep you up to date with information on legislation being considered at the local, state, and federal levels and provide opportunities for you to take action. For more information about these partners, simply look them up on the web using your preferred search engine. Thank you for joining us today. For more information, go to catchmybreath.org.